Hey everyone, welcome and thank you for joining. My name is Nilesh Thana. I'm a go-to-market data leader here at Zoom. I'll be talking about data reports to action in Zoom team chat. So before we get started, um, there may be some forward-looking statements. I would like to have you take a moment and just look at our safe harbor statement. Thank you. All right, so I have my amazing technical team together with me here, and we'll be able to walk you through the architecture, the code snippet, how to configure, and any questions you may have. Okay. So let's start with why, what problem we're trying to solve, what opportunities we saw for our sales and customer success workforce that inspired us, that kind of drove us to build the data genie. Right. And the next we'll cover that, well, what were the options and why we selected on a Zoom team chat. Of course, we'll jump right more into the more technical details, giving first a high-level architecture view, and then right into how to build, what tools we are available that we use, how that work, what to do with those tools, how to develop, test, and how to set up. And then, we'll cover some of the next new things coming, and we'll leave some time for Q&A, right? So I think as Tim mentioned in the opening keynote remark, right? The theme is building the real-time collaboration. And this is a great example of that, right? So one of the big area for our customer success and sales workforce was like how we can enable them to be able to spend more and more time with customers. And that's what they love, instead of having to go to 20 different places to find the data, right? How it can be simplified for them. So in a very simple glance, they are able to see all critical information that will really bring them up to speed with the latest and greatest about a given customer. Whether it's at a conference meeting the customer, having a QBR, or having some of the sales or renewal calls, all of these. And many times salespeople are on the go. They're very much mobile. So they're at airports, they're at conferences, all these places where this data is very easily available to them, and they can take quick action on that, right? So with that premise, we started with like, well, shall we build another standalone app? We bring another dashboard, right? How do we do? And what we learned from the amazing Zoom developer ecosystem, documentation and code samples, that, well, we don't have to build anything outside. We can actually leverage very familiar experience that our users have, and a tool they are spending pretty much all your time, right? Which is Zoom team chat. That's what is used for collaboration. There are continuous meeting chats coming from the post meetings. All of these, they are living day in, day out into that. It is already mobile ready as part of the Zoom client. You don't need to worry about desktop and client. It's right there. Based on what we saw, and you will also see in a very very soon in the following slides, it is very easy to build. That was again one of the big factors that, well, we have data, we have very easy way of putting a layer on top of that, how we can easily expose that into this amazing collaboration tool. Added bonus, you also get some of the features that is right out of Zoom chat. Like you can initiate a meeting from there. You can start a chat from there. You can get the organization information, all of that. So it was kind of a pretty much no-brainer once we looked at it and said, okay, where do we build? And say, well, this is the platform that our sellers love, and this is super easy to build. So let's put it on it. I'll quickly give a glimpse into the user interface, and I promise we'll jump directly into the technical soon after. Right. So this is an app which is available internally to Zoom, our Zoom sellers, where I, as a seller, would go and say, well, I'm interested in Data Genie customer because I'm meeting the head of IT, and I want to find out how we are doing with them, when is the renewal, etc. So I just typed Data Genie, that's it. And it came back with, say, well, there are a couple of customers that name matches with Data Genie. I picked the right one, and just in single click, I got a wealth of information with a beautiful, good summary of telling me how long the customer has been with us, what's their current MRR, when is the next renewal, listing some of the top contracts that can take me directly into the CRM system, right? And bunch of information that I want to look that, hey, how do I know, what they have purchased, what they are, how their adoption is, are there any big support tickets open with them? Are they happy with this, or they are having some issues in their opening support tickets? What are the new opportunities? Are there any risks associated? And the accounting, etc. So very super easy and quick way of doing this. Power of data insight, becoming actions through a Zoom collaboration component, which is the Zoom chat app. With that, I think I'll request Kanda to jump into the technical side of world and walk us through the architecture first.
Thanks, Nilesh. Today, I'm super excited to walk you through the end-to-end architecture of our Zoom chatbot solution, Data Genie. This is a classic three-layer architecture: the client, middleware, and the database. The solution is designed for secure, scalable, and conversational access to certified data sets curated by the Zoom data organization. Let's get into the client layer. So at the front, we have the Zoom client, which hosts the Data Genie chatbot. The Zoom team chat supports chatbots that can be used for a variety of purposes, including providing information, automating tasks, and integrating with other services as well. Now, here's what makes the Zoom chatbot particularly powerful. So the entire architecture is stateless. So we don't store any session info on the server. Uh, we pass context within each message between the client and the backend. So what this enables is pure horizontal scaling with zero session affinity, be able to develop fault tolerant and distributed processing engine. Additionally, what we do is we make use of the Zoom chatbot frameworks, built-in Markdown rendering capabilities. This allows us to create a rich, flexible UI, be it tables, bullet points, hyperlinks, visual highlights, right? All directly within the chat without any custom front-end coding. Right? The chatbot server itself captures the user input, enriches it with context, and forwards it to the backend for further processing. Next comes the middle layer, right? Or the middleware. So the request then flows through our firewall and load balancer, reaching the actual Data Genie server, which is hosted on an Elastic Compute service. The firewall helps control the inbound and outbound network traffic, and the load balancer enables distributed processing of the requests from the chatbot, right? At the core of the Genie server is the fast API application, which basically houses the API layer that receives and routes requests appropriate handlers. We have our own authorization module uh, that enforces strict access control. And then we have a stateless engine that reads the embedded context from each request to resolve the intent and then generate the data queries, right? Because we rely on message passed context, any backend instance can handle any message, right? There's no stickiness here, right? So no dependency on sticky sessions or in-memory context stores, right? And finally, we have the data layer, which is hosted on a cloud data warehouse. So the backend layer connects to the cloud data warehouse for querying the certified data sets. Again, the queries are executed securely, respecting the user's role and permissions. And then the results are packaged with updated context for the client to remember, and obviously leveraging the UI rendering capabilities, right? The markdown that I spoke about earlier. This sums up the architecture. Now I would like to pass it on to Rahul for a quick walkthrough on the tools and a bit of code.
Yeah, thanks Kanda for walking us through the architecture of Genie. So I'll be talking about the tools and technologies which we used while building the Data Genie app, followed by some of the code snippets from the app in production. So the first one that you see is the Zoom App Builder Kit. So this is a platform that helps us to visualize the UI elements of the app. So there are different UI elements like the buttons, the drop-down menus, text boxes. So all of them can be visualized in this particular platform. And each of the UI element is corresponding to a request payload. So that can also be seen on the same platform. So this was quite helpful to essentially do the development phase of the app. The second is the Fast API. So most of our code is based on Fast API, and we used Swagger for doing the testing. So the user just have to authenticate on the Swagger UI, and you can just see the request and the response model of the APIs. Apart from that, we have a Zoom client dev environment. So like the way we have the Zoom chatbot, we have a dev instance of that. So that is where the test Data Genie app was hosted, and we interacted with the app to see the request and the responses from the front end to the back end. And at last, we have the Zoom app marketplace. So as the name suggests, it's a marketplace where all the apps which are internal or external to Zoom are hosted. So users can come to this marketplace, they can request for access to an app, and via some like authentication protocols, they can get access to the app. So now we'll have a look at the Zoom App Builder Kit. So this is the platform that essentially helped us to build the UI of the app. So if you see in the center panel, there is a blue colored button which has primary written on it, and there is a text input label. So that's a freeform text. So these are the two UI elements which are shown for example. And if you want to render these elements on your app, the request that you need to send to the chatbot server is shown on the right side. So that shows you the JSON format of the request payload that needs to be basically built. So if you can notice, so this UI is being rendered completely from this JSON Python. So we did not use any React or JavaScript or any UI specific coding language, and it was purely dominated via Python. So if you want to visualize any other elements on the left panel, you can see a lot of options are there like radio buttons, switch groups, alerts, and you can like drag and drop them into the center panel to visualize what is the JSON payload going to look like. Yeah, next one. So now we'll have a look at some of the code elements of the app. On the top left, you have the app main code. So we instantiate the Fast API app and then set up the CORS middleware configuration. Then we set up the router with the prefix as data genie/version 0. And at the end, we run the app using the ubcon.run command. So this is the initial setup that is like common to the app. On the right side, you see the API's entry point. So as Kanda mentioned before, like all interactions that you do on the Data Genie app, so either you type a customer name or you click a button or you enter something in the text box, everything is captured and sent to the backend in the form of a context. So that context has information about the user who is interacting with the app, the different buttons, the payload format and what you have selected from the radio buttons in the front end, and everything goes into the backend to this router.post, what you see on the API entry point. And all that information is encapsulated within that JSON payload. And apart from the JSON payload, you also have the secret hot token, which is basically the token which is generated, which identifies who is the user who is making the call. So that is usually helpful to restrict access to different features to specific users. Yeah. So next one. So now we'll talk about the command interface and its usage. So what we did was we created a common class called common interface called command, which inherits from the abstract base class. And it has three different methods. One is SQL, template, and execute. So SQL and template are static methods, which means that the code is there. You just have to simply call the SQL and template functions under the command class without instantiating that. So this is to avoid like repeating the code again. And the last one is the execute one, which is an abstract method, which means that the inheriting classes of the command interface, they will implement this particular function. So you can see that the idea behind this was to make the code extensible. So if there is any new feature that we want to onboard on Data Genie, you don't have to keep writing this code again and again. So one of the example of it is shown on the right side, where you see the risk command class. So this is corresponding to the risk feature or the risk button on the Data Genie app. So the risk command inherits from the command interface and it implements the execute function. So this is the execute function which has all the crux of the code that you want to build. So it will have the information, it will have the code for connecting to your database, executing the SQLs, returning the columns that you want to show on the UI and everything. And apart from that, you have the SQL and the template. So this SQL and template are essentially two different files. So you can think of each new feature like usage, adoption, risk, opportunity. Each of them have their own SQL files. So correspondingly, they will execute, and each of them will have their own template. So in the next slide, we'll look at what does this template file look like. So on the top left, you see this is the Jinja template for the risk feature. So there are two curly braces if you see for around risk and explainability. So these are the two columns that we fetched while executing the SQL. And on the right side, you see that is how it gets rendered on the app. So there is a risk and followed by its value, which is the low risk, and explainability followed by its value, which is none. So these values come from our database when you execute that SQL corresponding to the risk. And likewise, you will have like all those like 6 or 7 features. Each of them will have their own Jinja template, and correspondingly, it is going to render the UI on the right side. So now I'll hand it over to Manik, who will talk about basically the integration of the API with the Zoom chat. Over to you, Manik.
Thanks, Rahul. So now comes Rahul and Skanda have pretty much discussed the hard part of how this API was created. Now comes the easiest part of them all, which is how we are going to integrate this API with Zoom Chat Client. So all you need to do is basically with a couple of clicks on the Zoom Marketplace, you can configure the app and set it up on Zoom Chat Client. So if you are an admin or if you have admin access, you can go into the app marketplace and you can click on the develop button on top right corner of the marketplace button of the marketplace page. And once you click on the develop button, you'll see these three options of general app, server to server OAuth app, or webhook only app. We want to create a general app because we are going to connect to a custom API. We are not connecting to a Zoom API. So if you have a custom API, you can always use a general app. And if you click create, you will be taken to the next page. Next slide. Yeah, so this is where you have to just input few basic details of what your app is going to look like. So we've selected that this app is going to be admin managed. That means there would be one admin who is going to have access to grant access to this app to other users, and then what scopes it should have. And then in the bottom, you see the app credentials. These are the app credentials that would be used for the API in the headers to determine which chat client and chat channel this API response should go to. If you see the bottommost part, that is the OAuth information. This is where you plug and play the API redirect URL that was created as part of your API development. You just input your URL here and you're ready to go. If you move to the next slide, we just want to show you how those app credentials that we talked about work. So this is the chatbot OAuth token function where we pass on the chatbot secret that we got from the previous screen. And we send a request to the chatbot token URL, which is a static URL, which again is stored in the secrets manager. And we get the access token and we validate it to authorize the user. So this is the basic gist of how the API has been connected to Zoom Chat Client, which is super easy, super simple, and it's like few clicks and you're ready to go. Over to Nilesh to talk about what's coming up next.
Yeah, so I think before kind of telling more about what's next, I would like to again use Tim's kind of keynote remarks. One is about Zoom's platform being, it's being open, right? And bringing the stake to you. So this is again a great example of very common in today's world that, there's gonna be the cloud data warehouse at any org. It's very common that the engineers kind of build an API layer on top of that. Very common industry things like fast API and Swagger. And with very easily, with very low effort, we could just go ahead and make it available in the tool of our user's choice. So very, very impressive. This is what you've seen so far. It's live. People are loving it. They want more. I think this is the area where we built something using another very rapidly growing popular product called Zoom Docs, and which also happens very good API integration in line with the open platform mindset that you heard about earlier as well. Right. So we built a very comprehensive account details, with the data that you saw in the interfaces in the Data Genie earlier, as well as bringing third-party data. So really making it super easy for our sales workforce to be able to get comprehensive account report within Zoom platform, and it's very exciting. Not all these days is complete without AI. You probably saw a number of sessions that covered the Zoom's custom AI companion, and how it can be integrated, how it's being used, some real examples, demos, and code. We are working on the same line. We have a very active development going on where our data insight that you saw at Zoom Data Genie demo, as well as the third-party data that our sellers use. We are working on integrating that into our internal Zoom AI companion. And so I would love to share more details in one of the future sessions. So with this, I will open it up for any Q&A. If there are any questions in the chat channel or Q&A, we'll address that. Thank you. Okay. Do you have any questions, team? Oh, I believe no questions. So we'll wait another minute if any other questions come. Otherwise, thank you very much. And feel free to use the session content offline, as well as forward it to your colleagues who may want to build such cool chat apps and solve the critical business problems for your organization. Thanks.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.